absolutely stunning piece of information. This really helps clarify for me some of the bovine fecal material I've been reading. It's really enlightened me in terms of approaching this material, and I want to thank you for that and for informing everyone in this room. We're going to hear next from Dr. Helen Caldicott. Some of you heard Dr. Caldicott this afternoon. She is trained as a pediatrician originally and set up a clinic for cystic fibrosis in Australia, and has taught pediatrics at Harvard Medical School in Boston. She has gradually moved over to addressing the nuclear issue because she has become so concerned about it. And without further ado, I will let Helen begin speaking. She's written a number of books, which she has here, and
I'm going to use this. You are? I'm sorry. Do you have any? Yes, I'll get them.
Yeah, so.
And a rubber.
Eraser.
Thank you, Ian. I'm so glad you're going to speak at Darlington. Just stop it. The commissioners are quite open. There's an Indian-looking guy. He understands genetics. There's a very nice Frenchwoman who's very intelligent. The chairman is totally charming. I'm not quite sure if he's being a politician or he's taking it in. But they had the goal to say, well, we measure tritium exposures to our workers and we keep it very low. And I'd already said that nothing stops tritium escaping except gold. And they said, no, they wear suits and they wear masks. And I said, so are the suits made of gold? I mean, they're just so pathetic. I've never heard such rubbish spoken by any people. It was totally irrational and made no sense and did not once address the issue. So they're wicked.
Yeah.
And they know it. And scare their pants off. I talked about testicles, they didn't like that. Alright. Well, I did a whole nuclear talk today and it's a bit boring, so you've just done. But I just want to show this map here. And I haven't learned the latest today from Fukushima. Does anyone know what the latest is? What? Yeah, well, Newfoundland. Yeah, I saw plume maps which were constructed from the radiation detector monitors that are so sensitive, set up to detect people who are testing weapons when they shouldn't be. And they're measuring this radiation. It's actually moved right around now to Sweden. So it's gone to the east coast of Canada and Boston, and it's spreading quite widely, and now it's being found in Europe and Sweden. My family, my son and grandchildren are in Boston, and I really am starting to think they need to fly out to Australia, because the air masses in the southern hemisphere and the northern hemisphere tend not to mix. I can't see any end to this accident. These people in the, well, I said they're dead men walking, going into the reactors to try and stop them melting down and the like. But I don't know where it's going to end, and I can't imagine how many millions of cases of cancer that's going to happen. And if the wind turns and blows south over Japan, and they suffered Hiroshima and Nagasaki, this is a tragedy beyond compare. It's if it really goes on, it's a nuclear war without the explosions. And I've often said it's going to take a major meltdown to stop the nuclear industry. I believe this will stop the nuclear industry and uranium mining, I think. But then we've got nuclear weapons. And we can't retrospectively look back if we have a nuclear war and say, well, you know, this is going to stop nuclear weapons because we won't be here. So this is the inevitability of this happening was so obvious to all of us who are scientists and understand. I mean, human beings are fallible. We've developed technology with which we have to be totally infallible. And there was a study done after the Challenger crash, and the study was in very, very complex systems, and there's a sort of a tree probability analysis, that almost always something will go wrong in a very complex system. And what happened was the O-ring, which was sort of made of, I don't know, rubber, and they knew they probably shouldn't launch it because it had been freezing the morning of the launch. But they'd launched it before when the temperature was quite cold, but not freezing. So they launched it, and the O-ring didn't work, and the Challenger blew up. Classic, absolutely classic of the idiocy of human beings. We're actually run by our reptilian midbrains, and we use our neocortex to justify what we want to do, and that's exactly what the nuclear industry is doing. And it's time to take them on full frontal. I'm sick of being polite now. After Fukushima, I just think, well, we've got to stop being nice, we've got to get stuck into our passions, and we've got to act from our truth in our gut. And we've got to speak the truth, and we've got to get out there and take over Parliament House, and that stupid Harper who knows nothing, and I don't know if Ignacio knows more or less. And I don't care what they do. Think of Egypt. Think of Egypt. Now those people are brave because he's, you know, what was his name? Mubarak. Yeah, I mean, he's tortured people, he's killed them and everything, but they still got out there. There's nothing to be afraid of except for our children and our future. Nothing to be afraid of. And I'm really fed up. I've been doing this for 40 years. You know, and we nearly got rid of nuclear weapons, and then Clinton came in with no guts and no spine. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And so that's his legacy. We could blow up tonight. So we've already got Fukushima. How many of us are sat beside a child dying of leukemia or patients dying of cancer? Hands up. Come on, all the doctors. It's absolute, and we nearly kill a child to try and save it, you know, and they become old and I don't know. And then the nuclear industry accused me of being emotional. Oh, you mustn't be emotional. Oh, I mean, until their child is dying of cystic fibrosis, and they fall into my arms weeping, or until they're dying on their deathbed, and they recant and tell me all the wicked things they've done, and their soul opens up like a rosebud, because now they're right at the coalface. Only then do you see the beauty of their souls. So the psychic numbing apparatus is most extraordinary, and it seems to be about power and money. This is a map of Europe, and it really doesn't say much compared to what's happening in Fukushima now, but of course there's Chernobyl. The wind changed 360 degrees in the first 24 hours, but it burnt for over 10 days. Gorbachev didn't tell anyone. The first radiation was detected in Sweden, and you can see those Scandinavian countries got a hell of a dose. These are non-viable areas. They're exclusion zones. People can't live there. Except the old people have gone back because they, you know, they don't really care, and they'll eat the mushrooms, which really concentrate the cesium. This map is only of cesium deposition. 1/3 of the inventory got out at Chernobyl, but this is symptomatic of other isotopes. Plutonium, huge amounts got out, cesium, strontium-90, and other actinides and the like, and it's spread all over. So you can see it came down in hotspots. Austria, Germany, even now in Cumbria and Wales, the lands are so, there are 360 farms with lands that are so full of cesium they can't be sold on the market, and the government said they have to close the farms down, and their farmers said, for how long? And they said, oh, about 100 years. It's not, it's 600 years. because the half-life of cesium is 30 years, which you multiply by, well, you multiply by 10 or 20, I do. It's not showing here. Greece got a hell of a lot, and Turkey got a huge amount. Turkey was so annoyed with Russia, it said, and got a huge dose, it picked all its tea and sent it back to Russia, so the Russians could have the joy of the radioactive tea. You go now to any health food shop and you'll find them full of Turkish dry apricots, Turkish hazelnuts. Don't buy them. I said to my health food shop man, are these radioactive? They're Turkish. He said, well, they're organic. All food's organic. So how ridiculous. People are really... Anyway, this is an accident in a 3-month-old reactor by a stupid man who's a hydroelectric specialist. Contaminated the whole continent. And I already talked about this study, you know, the New York Academy, and everyone's seen this. Now shows that nearly 1 million people have already died from Chernobyl. This is, as I said today, the biggest medical cover-up in the history of medicine. This is absolutely wicked. The IAEA say very few people died, WHO say very few people died. And now we've got Fukushima and we're getting the same sort of garbage out of the mouths of the Japanese. And the nuclear industry in America, and in England, and in Australia. And will they put me on in Australia? No, I'm some sort of nut like Jermaine Greer, you know, because of course all the nuclear industry is very calm and rational, and 40% of our, you know, of the uranium in the world comes from Australia, so we've just got to sell it. That's it. Okay, now we can take this off, because you've all seen that. Don't buy European food. Look at the label, see where it comes from, and having a clue which batches are radioactive and which are not. Okay. Flowers. Purple flowers. Okay, now I want to talk about bombs. This book, The New Nuclear Danger, I wrote just before George II went into Iraq. And it's got George looking very happy and Dick Cheney smiling and Colin Powell looking up at the mushroom cloud. But it goes into why America builds weapons, what the etiology is, and what could happen, and the psychology behind the weapons builders. And I won't have time to go through it all now, but I just want to tell you that there are about 23,000 hydrogen bombs in the world still. 3,000. Of which America and Russia own 97%. So who are the real rogue states holding the world at nuclear ransom every second of every day? Russia and America, the rogue states, the axis of evil. Yes, and Russia wants to get rid of hers. It's the Americans who have this nuclear addiction or nuclear psychosis. It's really a psychosis, I've come to think. And I've heard these characters talk at the Pentagon. They really are. I mean, they've got more than a personality disorder. They're almost more than sociopaths. I think we need to study them because that's the etiology of the problem in the world today, these men's brains. And I think there's all the men, you're all excluded in this audience, but my theory is, and I'm a bit like John Cleese, you know, he went on what was it? Monty Python. So he was this scientist, awfully ugly woman with straight hair, being interviewed by a BBC interviewer, and he said, now, Dr. Brown, I hear that you have a new theory. Yes, it's my theory, and I thought of it, and it's all mine. He said, well, now what is your theory, Dr. Brown? It's my theory, and I thought of it, it's all mine. And finally he got around to it, and so Dr. Brown said, a dinosaur is thin at one end, thick in the middle, and thin at the other, and it's my theory. So I go along with that. My theory is there's a bell-shaped curve of men. On the one end, a small number, are all you men in the audience, who are soft, gentle people who would never hurt a fly and are very sensitive. The average male would like to drive a car from 0 to 100 miles an hour in 3 seconds. That's the testosterone factor. That's how they sell cars, right? All this racing, all this sport, it's very male, it's very masculine, it's very testosterone oriented. They play video games, which are all about death, and that's how Hollywood makes its money, and the violence we're seeing now. They'll go to war. Most will come back absolutely devastated, as we discussed today. Then there's a very small minority, and I'm sure this is right, whose reptilian midbrain has a toxic reaction to testosterone. And that's Rumsfeld. And if I write my book, Why Men Kill and Women Let Them, I'm dedicating it to Rumsfeld, and his photograph's going to be on the frontispiece. Just look at him. You can see he's got real toxicity. Cheney's the same. And then, you know, you look at all the killers. I mean, in every square of Europe there's a killer on a horse. Why do we glorify war? Why is Napoleon? We've got a big monument tomb in Paris. He killed huge numbers of people. He's a killer. What about Alexander the Great? Why do we think war is so wonderful? National security, rhubarb. It's the Department of Death in America, not the Department of Defence. America doesn't have to defend itself, although, because it's got friendly country to the north and south, and it can defend itself with its Coast Guard. But the Pentagon is writing papers about that Canada actually might start to invade America. Do you know that? And I'm telling you the truth, they are. Talk about delusional. I mean, so, so they are spending almost $1 trillion a year on debt. If you spend $1 million a minute, I think this is accurate, since Jesus was born, you would have just about spent $1 trillion. This is obscene. I got out of the plane in Ottawa, and there greeting me was a great big poster from Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin is the biggest death industry in the whole world. Not only is it making missile defence, which will never work, but it's putting weapons in space. Well, you've got to keep going, you know, you've got to grow your economy, right? So I wrote this book, War in Heaven, and if you read this, it's Lockheed Martin's the leader, along with Boeing. Boeing doesn't really make big, it makes a few airplanes, but what it's doing is making missiles and putting weapons in space so that we can shoot down with laser beams and, quotes, affect very many kills. It's called the new frontier, the high frontier. And that destroy the other enemy satellites. America doesn't have any enemies. They've just had a few mad guys that flew into the World Trade Towers. So what do? They went to Afghanistan and killed a whole lot of people, and then they went into Iraq, and they've killed over 1 million people, according to the Lancet, civilians. Genocide, with great weapons, and it's great because when you use your bombs you have to make more. When your planes crash you have to make more. It's all good for business. And the corporations have been brilliant in America, I'm talking about ideology now, brilliant in America by putting weapons industries in every single congressional district. So it's jobs. Now, I mean, I'm sure that Hitler said we're building gas ovens because it creates jobs, it's good for the GDP. However, these people are creating a global gas oven. I kid you not. If ever people should be put in jail, now I'm a pacifist, but I sometimes think other things, but I won't say it. So it's Lockheed Martin, it's Northrop Grumman, it's Raytheon, it's
General Electric.
General Electric, yeah, General Electric, the guy John Rowe, no, the General Electric guy now is in charge of Obama's economic policy, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, War in Heaven. The new nuclear danger, we'll get on to that in a minute. So here we have all these weapons. Now what happened was, the anti-nuclear movement in the 80s, that was the second American Revolution. They had the Civil War or whatever. Oh no, they killed the redcoats, that's right. The shot that was heard around the world, that's right. And then we led the movement, the physicians in America. When I first went there, everyone said, and it was 1978, it's better to be dead than red. I said, really? You want to be dead? Yeah, we don't want to be communists. When I first went to America in 66, The first thing the immigration man said to me is, "Are you a communist?" I didn't even know what a communist was. So, yeah, I said, "What about the pygmies in Africa? They'll be killed too." And they said, "Yeah, no, they don't want to be communists either." So we got together our positions and we started doing the bombing runs. The first one was held at Harvard, and we got ex-Manhattan Project guys like Kistiakowsky and Jerry Wiesner and Philip Morrison, wonderful men who in fact developed nuclear weapons. And they talked and doctors talked for 2 days. And the media came to us and said, "What are doctors talking about nuclear war for?" And we said, "Well, it's medically contraindicated." It'll create the final epidemic of the human race. Really? So then there would be a map of Boston on the front page of the Boston Globe with the concentric circles of vaporization out to 5 miles, third-degree burns up to 20 miles radius, people turned into missiles sucked out of buildings travelling at 100 miles an hour, caused by 500 miles an hour winds, and a huge firestorm of 3,000 square miles enveloping the whole of Boston area. And the Pentagon doesn't take fire into its calculations when they calculate the damage of nuclear war. All they take in is blast. And so the bishop would get up in the morning, or the cardinal, and to look at the map and say, "Jesus wouldn't like this." And all sorts of people got involved. So from Physicians for Social Responsibility were cloned or metastasized, architects for social responsibility, real estate agents, because they said nuclear war would be bad for real estate, businessmen against nuclear war, artists against nuclear war, historians, because it would destroy history. And finally I was asked to go and talk to the annual morticians meeting. And I said, "What do you want me to talk to you about nuclear war?" They said, "We don't want to have to embalm radioactive bodies." And I said, "Don't worry, you'll be one yourself." Anyway, so I went along and described the whole thing, and you know, the country burning east to west and fires coalescing across the North American continent, and they passed a resolution against nuclear war. I went with the Southern Baptists. Now, I'm a conservative. We all are. We took the Hippocratic Oath and we're for conserving life. Okay? Let's talk the Queen's English. We're conservatives. So I'd go to the Southern Baptists. So I talked to them about what Jesus said. Love thine enemy, do good to those who hate you, covet not thy nation's good, thy neighbour's good. So I mean, he said everything. So it was very easy. And they'd love that. And I went to the Mennonites, I went to the, who are the people in Salt Lake City? Mormons. This old guy was 97, he was in charge of the Mormon church, but Reagan wanted to put the MX missile with 10 hydrogen bombs on it on railway lines in Utah. So I went and talked to him. Well, the Mormon church, they banned the MX on railway lines. You know, I went to talk to 30,000 Methodist women about the medical effects of nuclear war. They rushed back to their churches and said, "What are we doing about nuclear war?" And the ministers knew nothing. They wrote a pastoral letter against nuclear war. So in 5 years, from most people supporting the concept of nuclear war, 80% of Americans opposed it. And it was peaceful, sagacious, Gandhian, and exciting. That was indeed the Second American Revolution, which is not really written about in history books yet. And that did, and then I went to see Reagan. I met his daughter Patty at the Playboy Mansion, because Hugh Hefner was there with the, you know, the Playgirl of the Year, and they were the film stars, and I had to give a talk along with Paul Newman about nuclear war, because he was excerpting a book called With Enough Shovels. And what was his name, Jones, in FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, said, if we've got enough shovels, we're all going to make it. Oh. And so as the bomb was coming in, you get out your trusty shovel, and you dig a hole 6 feet long, 3 feet wide, and you get in the hole, and you put 2 doors on top, and dirt on top, and he said it's the dirt that does it, quote unquote. So that was being excerpted in Playboy, and someone said, who puts the dirt on top of your hole when you've got your hole? And someone said, your mother-in-law does. And then they had a evacuation plans on day one, you know, as the attacks coming. All the odd number plates fled from Boston and went to some little town in Vermont.